So I asked ChatGPT for advice on how to retire early, and it actually came up with 6 surprisingly useful tips, as well as an example of how much money it might take to retire by the age of 45. So in today's video, let's take a look at ChatGPT's 6 tips to retire early and see if they actually hold any weight. Then we'll take a look at how much money ChatGPT thinks it would take to retire by the age of 45, and I'll tell you why I don't think it's quite correct. All right, without wasting any time, let's launch into the first tip from ChatGPT, which is to set a financial goal. Now, this may seem super basic and high level, but it's actually pretty good advice because without setting a target or goal and knowing what you're aiming at, it's very difficult to actually achieve it. And according to ChatGPT, to retire early, you need to know how much money you need to save. Start by estimating your annual expenses in retirement and then multiply that by the number of years you expect to live in retirement. Add in any additional expenses you may have, such as healthcare or travel, and this will give you a target savings goal to work towards. The second tip for retiring early is to live below your means. And while again, at face value, this may seem super basic, it's actually a very simple piece of advice that many people fail to actually accomplish. According to ChatGPT, one of the most important steps in retiring early is to live below your means, because this means that as you spend less and earn more, you can save more. And so if you can cut out unnecessary expenses like eating out, buying expensive clothes, or taking expensive vacations, then you could save potentially hundreds or thousands of dollars per year. And every $100 or $1,000 that you save could be buying weeks, months, or even years of your time back in early retirement. The third tip from ChatGPT on how to retire early is to maximize your retirement accounts. So in the US, that would be something like a 401k, or if you live in other countries, of course, there's going to be different types of retirement accounts. And according to ChatGPT, by investing in these types of retirement accounts, you get tax advantages, which will help your money to snowball faster. And this is, of course, true, so this is definitely a great piece of advice. And another thing that ChatGPT says here about maximizing retirement accounts is actually a really good point that probably a lot of people overlook, which is to invest in index funds or mutual funds that have very low management fees, because that way, if you reduce the fees associated with actually investing the money that you save, then you can keep your costs of investing low, and the snowball effect leading up to an early retirement will actually speed up. The fourth tip for retiring early is to invest in additional income streams. Now, according to our friendly neighborhood AI, this means investing in things like rental properties, dividend-paying stocks, or other income-generating assets that help you build passive income streams. If you have passive income going into retirement on top of retirement savings, then this is going to help you achieve your goals a lot faster. And we'll come back to this when we talk about ChatGPT's example of how much money it would take to retire by 45, because this comes into play. The fifth tip here is to avoid debt, and especially high interest debt. And again, I think this one is definitely a no-brainer, and definitely this is the first thing that somebody should do if they're trying to get on solid financial ground, and of course also if they're trying to retire early. Because if you're carrying credit card debt that is 20% interest per year, then that is just absolutely killing your chance to build up a nest egg. In fact, you're going in the opposite direction, the wrong direction. So definitely pay down debt early. This is a great tip from ChatGPT, and everybody should implement this. But one important thing to mention here is that not all debt is equal. And while this certainly applies to high interest debt, if we're talking about lower interest debt, for example, to take out a mortgage on a home or to buy a business, then in some cases using that type of leverage could actually increase your ability to retire early. So it's certainly not the same rule all across the board. And the sixth and final tip from ChatGPT is to keep track of your progress. The AI says that you should regularly track your savings and progress and adjust your plan as necessary to make sure that you're meeting your savings goals. And while this last tip definitely makes sense, I think it kind of goes hand in hand with the goal setting, which was the first tip, and it's not necessarily all that practical. It's not going to help you reach retirement faster. But now let's take a look at ChatGPT's example of how much money it might take to retire by the age of 45 and what that might look like, because I think it's pretty interesting. So for starters, you have to determine what your target goal is. And in the example here, ChatGPT is using the example of $1 million. However, in today's environment of rapidly rising inflation and really increased cost of living, I don't know if $1 million would be appropriate. And in fact, according to a survey, most Americans think that, or the average American thinks that they'll need $1.7 million to be able to retire. But if the goal is 1 million or 1.7 million or some other figure, it really just depends on what you want your lifestyle and your quality of life to be in retirement. Because of course, if you live super frugally, you could live on a lot less than what the average person needs. Now, going on with the example here from ChatGPT, it's essentially saying that you have to cut out all unnecessary expenses and live frugally and potentially aim to save $50,000 per year, which definitely seems like a lot of money because we're talking about post-tax income and also after you've paid all of your expenses and your cost of living. And I think there's probably very few people today in the US or anywhere else really that are putting away $50,000 per year on top of what they're paying out just to cover their cost of living. You have to be making a pretty substantial amount to be able to accomplish that feat. But according to ChatGPT, if you can save $50,000 per year and you maximize all your retirement accounts, which actually is not necessarily an easy feat because you need to be making a decent amount of money just to be able to accomplish that. But if you can, then by the time you reach 45, you might be in a position to retire. However, ChatGPT is also assuming in this circumstance that you've invested in something like rental properties or other cash flowing assets that can yield approximately $15,000 per year extra on top of all the savings that you have. Now let's check the math on that in a retirement calculator to see if what ChatGPT is suggesting is actually even realistic. So if we assume that we're going to be able to put away $50,000 per year at an average rate of return of 5% compounded annually, and if we say that we're going to start working at the age of 25 after going to college and maybe having a couple internships and then retire at the age of 45, that means we'll be saving for 20 years. So if we plug these numbers into a retirement calculator and hit calculate, then you can see that at the end of those 20 years of work, by the age of 45, the total estimated savings would be approximately $1.6 million. Now, in one sense, I think this is not realistic because of course, someone just coming out of school, especially if they have some student debt or other types of debts to deal with, it's probably not going to be feasible to put away $50,000 per year after paying out cost of living and taxes and everything else. But as you get later in your career, especially if you have a high-paying job, that might be more feasible. However, as an average across 20 years, I really don't think this is realistic for the vast majority of people out there. But I guess the point is that this is aspirational because it's very hard to accomplish. In addition to having all this money saved, ChatGPT is suggesting that you actually have a passive source of income from rental properties or something else that brings in $15,000 a year to supplement the savings that you're going to be drawing down from as you move into retirement. So definitely aspirational, not completely unrealistic, but not easy. And I guess this is why less than 5% of people actually retire before the age of 45. So yeah, that is ChatGPT's advice on how to retire early. Of course, it's not a replacement for an actual financial planner or financial advisor, not yet anyways, but I think some of the tips that it's providing and some of the examples in the case study are actually grounded in reality, and they could help a lot of people. Even just being aware of some of these things and setting a target and moving towards that goal is certainly a helpful place to start. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. And if you want to see more content about investing, retirement, and personal finance, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you later.